The bouquet had a note and it felt like an order. I stared at the small white card tucked between the stems of pristine white lily, my fingers trembling as I held it up to the dim light of my delivery van. The handwriting was elegant, each letter perfectly formed in black ink that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. Wear black, don't ask why. 5 words. That's all it took to make my blood run cold. I hadn't put this note in the arrangement. I was meticulous about my work, had been ever since my grandmother taught me the language of flowers in her small shop in the Bronx. Every petal, every ribbon, every card was placed with intention. This note? This wasn't mine. My hand shook as I looked at the address on my phone again. 1247 East 72nd Street. Upper East Side. The kind of neighborhood where doormen wore white gloves and knew your name before you introduced yourself. The kind of place where a girl like me, with dirt under her fingernails and a 20-year-old van held together by prayer and duct tape, didn't belong. But $50,000 was $50,000. I could still hear the voice on the phone from this morning, smooth and professional, almost bored. We need white lily delivered to this address by 4 p.m. Money is not an issue. Name your price. I had stammered out a number 3 times higher than I'd ever charged, expecting them to laugh and hang up. Instead, there was a pause, then, done. The payment has been transferred. I checked my bank account with shaking hands. $2,000, just sitting there, real money. Enough to cover this month's rent on the shop. Enough to put a dent in Mom's medical bills. Enough to make me ignore every screaming instinct that told me something was wrong. The lilies shifted in their crystal vase as I turned onto East 72nd Street, and I caught a whiff of their scent-sweet, cloying, unmistakably funeral. My stomach clenched. Of course they were funeral flowers. What else would they be? The mansion appeared like something out of a Gothic novel. All dark stone and wrought iron set back from the street behind gates that probably cost more than my entire building in the Bronx. Security cameras tracked my van as I approached, their red lights blinking like predatory eyes. I pulled up to the intercom, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. Before I could press the button, a voice crackled through the speaker. Name and purpose, not a question, a command. Rose Carter, I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. Flower delivery for this address. Silence. Long enough that I wondered if they'd just leave me sitting here. Then the gates began to swing open with a mechanical groan that sounded like a warning. The driveway was lined with precisely trimmed hedges and illuminated by antique lampposts that cast long shadows across perfectly manicured lawns. As I got closer to the house, I noticed men in dark suits stationed at intervals along the path. They weren't gardeners. The bulges under their jackets told me exactly what they were. My grandmother's voice echoed in my memory. Mia, if you ever see men with guns trying to look like they don't have guns, you turn around and you run. But I couldn't run. Not with Mom's latest hospital bill sitting on my kitchen table. Stamped in angry red letters. Final notice. Not with the landlord's eviction warning taped to my apartment door. Not with my shop 3 months behind on rent and my suppliers starting to demand payment up front. I parked the van where a stern-faced man in a black suit directed me, then carefully lifted the vase of lily. They were perfect, I'd made sure of that. Each stem cut at the ideal angle, each bloom at the peak of opening, the arrangement balanced and elegant. If I was walking into something dangerous, at least my work would be flawless. The front door opened before I reached it. A woman in her 60s stood there, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, her black dress expensive and elegant. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but her expression was carefully neutral. The flowers, she said, and it wasn't a question. Yes, ma'am. White lily as ordered. She stepped aside, gesturing me into a foyer that took my breath away. The floor was marble, real Italian marble, the kind I'd only seen in museums. A chandelier hung from the vaulted ceiling, dripping with crystals that caught the light and scattered it like diamonds. Original artwork lined the walls, the kind that made you afraid to breathe too hard near them. This way, the woman said, and I followed her deeper into the house, acutely aware of how my worn sneakers squeaked against the pristine floor. We entered what appeared to be a formal sitting room. More art, more expensive furniture, more evidence that I was so far out of my depth I might as well be drowning. The woman indicated a side table near the window. Place them there. I did as instructed, arranging the vase just so, making sure the flowers faced the right direction to catch the afternoon light. It was only when I stepped back that I noticed the photographs. They covered an entire wall, black and white images and ornate frames. Most featured the same man, distinguished, silver-haired, with sharp eyes and a smile that didn't quite reach them. In some photos, he was younger, darker-haired, surrounded by other men in suits. In others, he was older, holding children, standing beside the woman who'd let me in, family photos. But there was something about them, something in the way everyone stood just slightly too straight, their smiles just slightly too controlled. "They're beautiful," the woman said, and it took me a moment to realize she meant the flowers. Antonio would have loved them. Antonio, past tense. "I'm sorry for your loss," I said automatically, the way you do when confronted with grief. "Are you?" Her voice was sharp, her eyes suddenly focused on me with an intensity that made me want to step back. "Did you know him?" "No, I'm just the florist." "I deliver flowers." "Just the florist." She studied me for a long moment, and I had the unsettling feeling she was looking for something, searching my face for answers to questions I didn't understand. "You received the note." It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. "And yet you came." The payment was generous. A sound from the doorway made us both turn. A man stood there, and the air seemed to leave the room. He was tall, over 6 feet easily, with the kind of build that spoke of both gym time and genuine physical labor. His suit was black, perfectly tailored to his broad shoulders and narrow waist, but it was his face that stopped my heart. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw covered in precisely trimmed stubble, and eyes so dark they were almost black. His hair was styled back from his face, revealing a widow's peak that gave him a vaguely dangerous look. But it was the grief in those dark eyes that made my breath catch. Raw, barely contained, like a wound that had been torn open and left to bleed. "Dante," the woman said softly. "The florist is here." His gaze shifted to me, and I felt it like a physical touch. He studied me with the same intensity as the woman, but there was something else in his expression, recognition, maybe, or confusion. "You came," he said, and his voice was deep, rough with emotion or exhaustion or both. Yes, I delivered the flowers." He moved into the room with the fluid grace of a predator, and I found myself taking an involuntary step back. He stopped immediately, something flickering across his face, awareness, maybe, that he was frightening me. "The note," he said. "You received it?" I pulled the small white card from my pocket, my fingers clumsy as I held it out. He took it, and our fingers brushed for just a second. His hand was warm, callous despite the expensive suit. He stared at the card for a long moment, and I watched a muscle jump in his jaw. When he looked up, those dark eyes found mine again. "My father left very specific instructions," he said quietly. "You were to receive this note. You were to wear black. You were to attend his funeral tomorrow." The room tilted slightly. "I'm sorry. I think there's been a mistake. I don't know your father." "I'm just the florist," he interrupted, but not unkindly. "Yes, I heard, but my father was very clear. The woman who delivers the white lily is to attend his funeral. No questions. No explanations." "That's insane," I said before I could stop myself. The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. "Yes," he agreed. "My father was many things. Sane was not always one of them. The woman, his mother, I realize now. Seeing the resemblance in their cheekbones and the set of their jaws made a soft sound of protest. Donnie's expression softened slightly when he looked at her. "I know, Mama, I know." He turned back to me. "I understand this is unusual. Uncomfortable, even. But I'm asking you to honor my father's last wish. By attending a funeral for a man I never met? Yes. Why?" "I don't know." The admission seemed to cost him something. "But my father, when he asked for something, there was always a reason. Always. I have to trust that. Even if I don't understand it yet, I should have said no. Should have set down the note, apologized politely, and walked out of that mansion back to my regular life of struggling to make rent and watering down my mother's pain medication because we couldn't afford another prescription. But then he said, 'I'll pay you $50,000. The number hit me like cold water. I actually swayed on my feet. 50,000, I repeated stupidly. For one day, attend the funeral tomorrow. Stand beside my family. Tell anyone who asks that you were a friend of my father's from years ago, nothing more. After the service, you're free to go and you'll never have to see any of us again. Why?' The word came out as barely a whisper. 'Because I loved my father,' Dante said simply. And this was his dying wish. I have to honor it. $50,000. I could pay off Mom's hospital bills, all of them. Could save my shop. Could maybe finally breathe without the weight of financial disaster crushing my chest. I need to think about it, I heard myself say. Dante reached into his jacket. I flinched. I couldn't help it and pulled out a business card. Heavy cardstock, black with silver lettering. Just a name, Dante Salvatore, and a phone number. Call me tonight, he said, pressing the card into my hand. Whatever you decide. He turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. For what it's worth, Miss Carter, I can see that you're scared. I understand. But I give you my word, no harm will come to you under my protection. Not from me, not from anyone. The way he said protection sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with fear. After he left, his mother walked me to the door. At the threshold, she caught my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. The note? She said quietly. It was in Antonio's handwriting. He wrote it 3 days before he died. Whatever reason he had for wanting you there, it was important enough that he spent some of his last hours on this earth making sure it would happen. Her eyes searched mine. Maybe you should trust that. I drove home in a daze, the business card burning a hole in my pocket. My phone rang twice, Mom, probably wondering where I was, but I couldn't answer. Couldn't form words that would make sense. Back in my tiny apartment in the Bronx, I sat at my kitchen table and stared at 2 pieces of paper. The eviction notice, stark and cruel in its bureaucratic language. And Dante Salvatore's business card, elegant and mysterious. $50,000, 1 funeral, 1 day of my life. My phone buzzed. A text from the hospital. Your mother's treatment plan has been suspended due to outstanding balance. Please contact our billing department immediately. I picked up Dante's card and dialed before I could talk myself out of it. He answered on the first ring. Miss Carter, how did you know it was me? I've been waiting. A pause. What's your answer? I closed my eyes, thought of my mother's tired smile, thought of my grandmother's flower shop that I was failing to keep alive, thought of all the ways I'd been drowning slowly for the past 3 years. I'll do it, I whispered. But I want half the money now. There was a beat of silence, then a low chuckle that did strange things to my stomach. Smart, I'll have it transferred within the hour. I'm sending a car for you tomorrow at 9 a.m. The funeral is at 11. What should I wear? Black, he said softly. Just like the note said. After he hung up, I sat in the darkness of my apartment and wondered what I'd just agreed to. But when my phone chimed with a banking notification deposit, $25,000. Zero from Salvatore Enterprises LLC, knew there was no turning back. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Dante Salvatore's face, those dark eyes full of grief and something else I couldn't name. I saw the mansion, the men with guns, the photographs of a man I never met but who had somehow decided I needed to be at his funeral. At 7 a.m., I gave up on sleep and took a shower, standing under water that never quite got hot enough, trying to wash away the feeling that I was making a terrible mistake. My reflection in the foggy mirror looked pale, hollow-eyed. I looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. I looked like someone who was about to attend a stranger's funeral for money. Because that's exactly what I was. My closet held exactly 1 black dress, the one I'd worn to my grandmother's funeral 3 years ago. It still fit barely, though I'd lost weight since then. Couldn't afford to eat much when you were choosing between groceries and keeping the lights on. I pulled it on, zipped it up, stared at myself. I looked like a mourner. I looked like I belonged at a funeral. The lie was already taking shape. At exactly 9 a.m., my buzzer rang. I grabbed my worn black purse and headed downstairs, expecting maybe a town car, something professional but understated. Instead, a gleaming black Mercedes waited at the curb, so pristine it looked like it had been delivered that morning. The driver wore a dark suit and sunglasses, and he opened the rear door without a word. The interior smelled like leather and money. I sank into seats softer than my bed and tried not to think about how much this car probably cost. Tried not to calculate how many months of rent it represented, how many of my mother's treatments. We drove in silence through the morning traffic, leaving the Bronx behind, crossing into Manhattan, heading uptown. The neighborhoods got progressively nicer, the buildings taller and more expensive, until we were back in that world of doormen and private schools and people who'd never worried about making rent. The car pulled up to a building I didn't recognize, a boutique with blacked-out windows and a simple sign, Marcella's. The driver opened my door. Mr. Salvatore asked that you be properly attired, he said. It was the first time he'd spoken. Everything has been arranged. Before I could protest, the boutique door opened and a woman in elegant black emerged, smiling professionally. Miss Carter? Please come in. We've been expecting you. I followed her into a space that was more art gallery than clothing store. Soft lighting, plush carpets, racks of dresses that probably cost more than my car. The woman Marcella, I assume, gestured to a private fitting room. Mr. Salvatore requested that you choose whatever you prefer. Everything has already been paid for. I have a dress, I said weakly. I'm sure you do. Her smile was kind but firm. Humor me, she brought out 6 dresses, all black, all stunning, all completely out of my league. There was a Dior sheath that probably cost $5,000, a Valentina with delicate lace sleeves, a St. Laurent that was simultaneously elegant and dangerous. I chose the simplest one, a black wool dress by the row, knee-length with long sleeves and a high neckline, classic, understated, not trying too hard. Marcella nodded approvingly and produced accessories. Delicate pearl earrings, a slim black clutch, shoes that actually fit. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. I looked expensive. I looked like I belonged. I looked like a lie. The car took me to the mansion next. This time, the gates opened immediately, and we drove past the guards without stopping. The house looked different in daylight, less gothic, more grimly elegant. Cars lined the circular driveway, all black, all expensive. Danny met me at the door himself. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than everything I own combined, but it was his face that stopped me. The grief was still there, carved into every line, but there was something else now, a kind of grim determination. You came, he said, and there was relief in his voice. You paid me to? A ghost of a smile. Honest, I appreciate that. He offered his arm. The service is in 20 minutes. I need to brief you first. I took his arm because refusing seemed rude, and he led me through the house to a private study lined with books that looked older than the building itself. He closed the door, and suddenly we were alone. Here's what you need to know, he said, leaning against his desk. My father was Antonio Salvatore. He was in business. Import-export primarily. The way he said it made it clear what kind of business. He died 3 days ago. Heart attack. Quick, if that matters. Dante's voice was carefully neutral. There will be approximately 200 people at the funeral. Family, business associates, old friends. If anyone asks, you knew my father casually through mutual acquaintances. You're here to pay your respects, nothing more. And the note? I asked. Why did he want me here? I don't know. Dante pushed a hand through his hair, disturbing the perfect style. I've been through his papers, his files, everything. There's no mention of you, no connection I can find. Just the instruction. The woman who delivers the white lily must attend my funeral. Make sure she wears black. That's insane. Yes, he agreed. But Antonio Salvatore didn't do things without reason. There's something here I'm not seeing yet. A knock at the door interrupted us. Dante, a male voice called. It's time. Dante straightened, and I watched his expression shift, grief carefully tucked away, replaced by something harder, more controlled. The mask of a man who couldn't afford to appear weak. Stay close to me, he said quietly. Don't let anyone separate us. And Rose? He caught my chin gently, tilting my face up until I had to meet his eyes. Thank you for doing this. I know you don't understand why, and God knows I don't either, but thank you. The funeral was held in the mansion's ballroom, which had been transformed into a chapel. Rows of chairs faced a dais where Antonio Salvatore's casket rested, covered in more white lily. My lily, I realized with a start. Someone had taken the arrangement I delivered and placed it front and center. Dante led me to the front row, his hand warm and steady on my lower back. I sat between him and his mother, acutely aware that every eye in the room was on us. Whispers followed our entrance, subtle but unmistakable. Who is she? Why is she sitting with the family? Is that Dante's? The service began. I tuned out most of it, focusing on breathing, on sitting still, on not giving away that I had no idea who these people were. A priest spoke in both English and Italian, his voice echoing in the cavernous room. People stood to share memories, business partners who spoke carefully. Old friends who reminisced about better times, Antonia's brother who broke down mid-eulogy. Through it all, Dante sat rigid beside me, his hands clenched in his lap. Once, when the priest mentioned Antonio's devotion to family, I felt Dante's whole body tense. Without thinking, I reached over and placed my hand over his. He went very still. Then his hand turned, his fingers threading through mine, gripping tight enough to hurt. We sat like that for the rest of the service, holding hands like we'd known each other for years instead of 24 hours. And when it was over, when people stood and began to file past the casket, Dante didn't let go. "Come with me," he murmured. He led me to the casket. Up close, Antonio Salvatore looked smaller than in his photographs, age and death having stolen something essential. But even in death, there was something formidable about him, something that spoke of power and authority. "Papa," Dante said softly in Italian, then switched to English, perhaps for my benefit. "I brought her like you asked." "I don't know why, but I did." He paused, his jaw working. "I hope you had a good reason." "I hope this means something." A man approached, older, silver-haired, with sharp eyes that reminded me of Antonio's. He embraced Dante, then turned to me with curiosity barely concealed. "And who is this?" he asked in accented English. "An old friend of my father's," Dante said smoothly. "Rose Carter." The man studied me with unnerving intensity. "Strange. Antonio never mentioned you." "We lost touch," I said, surprised at how steady my voice was. It had been years. He didn't look convinced, but he nodded politely. "My condolences on your loss. This happened again and again." People approached, offered condolences, asked who I was. Each time Dante introduced me the same way. Each time I felt the weight of their suspicion, their curiosity. Finally, mercifully, it was over. The crowd began to disperse, heading to a reception in another wing of the house. Dante's mother touched his arm. "I need to greet the family," she said softly. "Will you?" "I'll handle it," Dante assured her. He turned to me. "Come, we should eat something." The reception was held in a dining room that could have hosted a royal banquet. Tables groaned under the weight of catered food, Italian, mostly, the kind that smelled like my grandmother's kitchen used to. Despite everything, my stomach growled. "When did you last eat?" Dante asked, noticing. "Yesterday." The admission slipped out before I could stop it. "Maybe the day before." His expression darkened. "Sit, I'll bring you a plate." "You don't have to." "Sit, Rose." There was command in his voice, the authority of someone used to being obeyed. I sat. He returned with 2 plates piled high with food I couldn't name but that looked incredible. He set one in front of me, then sat beside me with the other. "Eat," he said. "Please," I did, and it was the best food I'd tasted in months, maybe years. I tried to be delicate about it, but I was so hungry and it had been so long since I'd had a real meal. Dante watched me with an expression I couldn't read. "Your mother?" he said after a while. "She's sick?" I froze, a fork halfway to my mouth. "How did you mentioned hospital bills." "And you have that look, the one people get when someone they love is dying and they're powerless to stop it." I set down my fork, my appetite suddenly gone. "Cancer, stage 3. The treatment's expensive and our insurance is..." I laughed bitterly. "Let's just say it's not enough." "What kind of cancer?" "Pancreatic." Dante was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was soft. "My father had liver cancer, they caught it late. He refused treatment, said he'd lived long enough, didn't want to spend his last months hooked up to machines." He stared at his untouched food. "Sometimes I wonder if I should have pushed harder." "Made him try." "You can't make someone fight if they're tired of fighting," I said quietly. His dark eyes found mine. "No, I suppose you can't." We sat in comfortable silence, surrounded by strangers who thought they knew us, holding secrets we couldn't share. It should have been uncomfortable. Instead, it felt oddly intimate, this moment of truth in a day of lies. Dante, a man appeared at his shoulder 30s, expensive suit, cold eyes. "We need to talk, business." Dante's expression shuddered. "Not today, Marco. It can't wait." "Then it will have to." Dante's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "Today I bury my father. Tomorrow we talk business." Marco's jaw tightened, but he nodded and walked away. I watched him go, watched the way other men stepped aside for him, the way conversations paused when he passed. "Who was that?" I asked. "My cousin." He runs the Dante caught himself. He handles certain aspects of the family business. The family business. The euphemism hung between us, heavy with unspoken truth. You don't have to protect me from reality, I said. I'm not stupid. I know what kind of family this is. Dante studied me with those dark, intense eyes. And yet you're still here. $50,000 buys a lot of willful ignorance. He laughed, actually laughed, and the sound was so unexpected, so genuine that it transformed his face. For just a moment he looked younger, lighter, like the weight he carried had been lifted. God, you're honest, he said. Do you have any idea how rare that is in my world? I'm a florist from the Bronx. I can't afford to be anything else. His smile faded, replaced by something more serious. You're more than that. He paused, seeming to search for words. You're real. Everyone here, they play games, they lie, they tell me what they think I want to hear. But you're just yourself. I'm a woman pretending to be a friend of your dead father for money, I pointed out. Yes, but you're honest about it. He leaned closer and I could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive with notes of cedar and spice. That matters more than you know. Before I could respond, his mother appeared. Dante, the reading of the will is about to begin. The lawyer needs everyone in the study. Dante stood, offering me his hand. This shouldn't take long. You can wait here, or Mr. Salvatore? The lawyer himself appeared, an elderly man with wire-rimmed glasses and a leather briefcase. Miss Carter needs to be present. Dante and I exchanged confused glances. Why? He asked. She's mentioned in the will. The world tilted again. I grabbed the table's edge to steady myself. That's impossible, I said. I never met Antonio Salvatore. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. Nevertheless, his instructions are clear. Miss Rose Carter is to be present for the reading of the will. Dante's hand found my elbow, steadying me. It's okay, he said quietly. We'll figure this out. The study was crowded with family members, Dante's mother, his cousin Marco, an uncle, several others whose relationships I couldn't track. They all stared at me with varying degrees of confusion and hostility. The lawyer cleared his throat and began reading. Most of it was standard percentages of the business divided between family members, property distributed, accounts assigned. I tuned it out, my heart hammering, waiting for the moment when my name would be called. Finally, and to Miss Rose Carter, daughter of Margaret Carter, I leave the sum of $100,000 and my deepest gratitude for services rendered. Silence fell like a guillotine blade. What? Dante's voice was sharp. What services? Who is Margaret Carter? The lawyer consulted his notes. Margaret Carter worked as a private nurse for your father in 1996, following the incident at the warehouse. According to Mr. Salvatore's notes, she saved his life and refused all payment. He wished to repay that debt through her daughter. My mother had saved Antonio Salvatore's life. And she'd never told me. This is ridiculous, Marco spat. She's a con artist, clearly. Probably heard about Antonio's death and enough. Dante's voice cracked like a whip. The will is clear. My father's wishes will be honored. She's a stranger, Marco insisted. We don't know anything about her. We know my father trusted her enough to include her in his will. That's enough for me. The lawyer continued reading, but I couldn't hear him over the roaring in my ears. $100,000. My mother had saved a mob boss's life, and he'd never forgotten. After the reading, Dante pulled me into a private corner. Did you know? About your mother and my father? No, God, no. She never mentioned working for any Salvatores. She was a nurse, yes, but she never talked about her patients. 1996. Dante's eyes were distant, calculating. I was 16. There was an attempt on my father's life. A rival family tried to take him out. He was shot 3 times. They brought him to a safe house instead of a hospital, afraid there might be another attempt. A nurse was called in. He focused on me again. Your mother, she would have been 25, I said slowly. Young, just out of nursing school. And she saved his life. Dante's voice was filled with wonder. All these years he never forgot. And when he was dying, he made sure he didn't finish, but I understood. Antonio Salvatore had made sure his son would protect the daughter of the woman who'd saved him. I need to go, I said abruptly. I need to talk to my mother. I'll have my driver take you. No, I needed to be alone, needed to process this. I'll take the subway. Rose, please, Dante, I need some time. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but take this. He pulled out his wallet and extracted a stack of bills. For a cab, at least. The subway's not safe this time of day. I wanted to refuse, wanted to maintain some shred of independence. But he was right, it was late afternoon, and the subway from Upper East Side to the Bronx could be dangerous for a woman alone. Thank you, I said, taking the money. He walked me to the door personally, past the stares of his family, past the whispers that followed us. At the threshold, he caught my hand. Rose, whatever happens next, whatever you decide, I'm not what I said. You're under my protection now. If you need anything at all, you call me. I nodded, not trusting my voice, and left. The cab ride gave me time to think, to piece together fragments of my mother's past that suddenly made sense. The way she'd never wanted to talk about her nursing days. The way she'd insisted we stay in the Bronx even when things got bad, like she was hiding. The way she'd always told me to stay away from certain types of people. The hospital loomed ahead, and my stomach clenched. My mother was on the 4th floor in the oncology wing, probably sleeping or reading or staring out the window at a city that was bleeding her dry. I found her awake, sitting up in bed, looking frailer than she had just days ago. But when she saw me in my expensive black dress, her eyes widened. Rose, where have you been? I pulled a chair close to her bed and took her hand. I need you to tell me about Antonio Salvatore. All the color drained from her face. What do you? I delivered flowers to his funeral today, Mom, White Lily. And apparently his last wish was for me to be there. Because you saved his life in 1996. She closed her eyes and I saw tears slide down her cheeks. I knew this would happen, she whispered. I knew he'd never forget. Tell me, I said gently. Please, I need to understand. So she did. She told me about being a young nurse, struggling to make it in the city, taking whatever job she could find. About the night 3 men had brought a bleeding stranger to a safe house, offering her $5,000 to save his life and never speak of it. About how she'd worked through the night, extracting bullets, stitching wounds, keeping him alive through sheer will. I refused the money, she said. It felt wrong, taking payment for saving someone's life. He tried to insist, but I couldn't. She squeezed my hand. I didn't know who he was, not then. Found out later, of course. And I was terrified he'd come after me for knowing too much, or force me to work for him, but he didn't. No. He sent flowers every year on the anniversary. White Lily, no card, no message, just flowers. A reminder that he remembered and that I was safe. White Lily. Of course. He left me money in his will, I said quietly. $100,000, my mother's breath caught. Oh, Rose, and his son Dante, he says I'm under their protection now. That his father wanted to make sure we were taken care of. Dante. Mom's voice was soft. He was just a boy when I knew him. 16, maybe 17. Quiet, intense. Always watching, always learning. She looked at me with frightened eyes. Rose, these people, they're not like us. That money comes with strings, whether they say so or not. What if I don't take it? Can we afford not to? The question hung between us, brutal in its honesty. My mother's treatment costs were astronomical. The hospital was threatening to discharge her. We were drowning, and Antonio Salvatore had thrown us a lifeline from beyond the grave. I don't know what to do, I admitted. Take the money, Mom said firmly, but be careful. These families, they're loyal, yes, but they're also dangerous. Don't get drawn in too deep. Take what you need and walk away. I nodded, but even then I knew it wouldn't be that simple. Dante's dark eyes, his grief, his unexpected gentleness, they'd already pulled me in deeper than I wanted to admit. I stayed with my mother until visiting hours ended, then took a cab back to my apartment. The building looked shabbier than ever after a day spent in mansions and designer boutiques. My apartment was cold. I turned down the heat to save money and lonely. I changed out of the expensive dress, hanging it carefully in my closet like it was made of glass. Then I sat on my lumpy couch and stared at my phone. Dante had texted while I was at the hospital. I hope you're okay. Let me know if you need anything. One typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on. I'm fine. Thank you for today. His reply came immediately. You honored my father. I won't forget that. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. There were 1,000 things I wanted to ask him, 1,000 questions that had no good answers. Instead, I wrote, about the money from the will. I don't feel right taking it. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, can I call you? My heart jumped. Yes, the phone rang within seconds. Rose. His voice was warm, intimate in my ear. Don't refuse the money out of pride. It's not pride, I didn't earn it. I didn't do anything. Your mother saved my father's life. That's not nothing. She was just doing her job. She refused payment when many would have taken it and run. She kept his secret when revealing it could have been profitable or dangerous. And most importantly, he paused, and I heard something shift in his voice. She gave my father 16 more years of life. 16 years to see me grow up, to build his empire, to make peace with his choices. 16 years he wouldn't have had without her. How do you put a price on that? I had no answer. The money is yours, Dante continued softly, no strings. Use it for your mother's treatment, your shop, whatever you need. My father wanted to help you, and so do I. Why? The question burst out. Why do you care? You don't know me. Silence. Then, I don't know, but I do care. Maybe because you're the first honest person I've met in years. Maybe because seeing you with my family today, watching you try so hard to do right by a man you never met, it reminded me that there are still good people in this world. Or maybe another pause. Maybe I'm just selfish, and I don't want you to disappear now that the funeral's over. My breath caught. Dante, I know I'm asking too much. I know this whole situation is insane. But Rose, please don't shut me out. Not yet. I should have said no. Should have thanked him politely, taken the money, and never looked back. But his voice in my ear, the raw honesty in his words, the memory of his hand in mine during the funeral. Okay, I whispered. Okay. I won't shut you out. But I need time to process all of this. Can you give me that? Take all the time you need. Relief colored his words. Just promise you'll call if you need anything. Anything at all. I promise. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness of my apartment and wondered what I'd just agreed to. Outside my window, the Bronx hummed with its usual nighttime symphony sirens and shouting, and the rumble of the elevated train. My world familiar and safe despite its struggles. But somewhere across the river in a mansion I'd visited for just one day, Dante Salvatore was probably sitting in his late father's study, surrounded by the weight of an empire he'd inherited, thinking about a florist from the Bronx who'd stumbled into his life on the worst day of his life. And somehow, impossibly, I was thinking about him too. I didn't hear from Dante for 3 days. Part of me was relieved I needed space to process everything, to adjust to the sudden influx of money in my bank account. The 50,000 from the funeral plus the 100,000 from the will had appeared the morning after, to have difficult conversations with my mother about our past and our future. But part of me, a part I didn't want to examine too closely, kept checking my phone, jumping at every notification, wondering if he'd forgotten about me. On the 4th day, flowers arrived at my shop. I knew they were from him before I even opened the card. The arrangement was massive white roses this time, dozens of them, pristine and perfect. The card was simple. Thank you for everything. I ran my fingers over the petals. Professional habit assessing their quality. They were flawless, expensive, probably cost more than I made in a week. I should have sent them back. Should have maintained boundaries, kept my distance from a world I didn't belong in. Instead, I texted him, "The roses are beautiful. You have good taste." His reply was immediate, "I have a good florist." I smiled despite myself. Flattery will get you everywhere. Good to know. Are you free for dinner tomorrow night? My heart stuttered. This was at the moment where I could back away, thank him politely, and return to my normal life. Yes, I typed before I could overthink it. I'll pick you up at 7, wear something nice. Something nice was relative when your entire wardrobe consisted of work clothes and one funeral dress. But the money from Antonio's will was sitting in my bank account untouched. I could afford one nice dress, just one. I found myself back at Marcella's, the boutique where Dante had sent me for the funeral. Marcella remembered me, greeting me like an old friend. "Mr. Salvatore called," she said with a knowing smile. "Said you might need something for dinner. He called ahead? He's very thorough." She led me to a private room where several dresses waited. "He also said to tell you that everything is already paid for, but that if you insist on paying yourself, he understands. The dresses were stunning, a deep burgundy sheath, a midnight blue cocktail dress, a forest green silk that caught the light. All elegant, all expensive, all completely beyond anything I'd ever owned. I can't let him pay for this, I said. Then don't. Marcella's smile was kind. Pay with the money his father left you. It's yours to spend as you wish. She had a point. And if I was going to have dinner with Dante Salvatore, I needed armor. Beautiful clothes as protection against feelings I couldn't afford to have. I chose the burgundy, it made my skin glow and gave me confidence I didn't quite feel. Marcella added shoes, a clutch, even helped me with makeup. When I looked in the mirror, I saw someone who could hold her own in Dante's world. The lie was getting easier. Dante picked me up himself, driving a sleek black Aston Martin that probably cost more than my shop and apartment combined. He wore a charcoal suit with no tie, the top button of his shirt undone, and when he saw me, his eyes went dark. You look incredible, he said, and there was something in his voice that made heat pull low in my stomach. You clean up pretty well yourself. He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his face, and opened the car door for me. The interior smelled like leather and his cologne, intimate and expensive. Where are we going? I asked as he pulled into traffic. You'll see. We drove through Manhattan, the city lights blurring past, and I watched Dante's hands on the steering wheel, strong, capable, with calluses that spoke of work more physical than signing business documents. He caught me looking and raised an eyebrow. What? Your hands, I said without thinking. They're not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Softer, maybe, more executive. I work with my hands when I can. My father believed everyone in the family should understand the business from the ground up. I've loaded trucks, worked warehouses, done construction on our properties. He flexed his fingers on the wheel. Keeps me grounded. Reminds me where we came from. Where did you come from? He was quiet for a moment, navigating a turn. My grandfather came from Sicily with nothing but the clothes on his back and a willingness to do what others wouldn't. He built an empire, through sweat and blood and choices that would have destroyed a weaker man. My father inherited that empire and expanded it, made it legitimate in some ways, buried it deeper in others. His jaw tightened. Now it's mine. Lucky me. You didn't want it? One has nothing to do with it. I'm the oldest son. It was always going to be mine. What would you have done? If you'd had a choice? He glanced at me, surprise flickering across his face. No one's ever asked me that. I'm asking. He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, architecture maybe. I used to draw buildings when I was a kid, skyscrapers, houses, bridges. My father called it a waste of time. He smiled wryly. Turns out managing construction projects for the family business was close enough. I tried to imagine. Dante Salvatore as an architect, designing buildings instead of running an empire. It shouldn't have fit, but somehow it did. That same attention to detail, that same understanding of structure and foundation. It's not too late, I said softly. Yes, it is. No bitterness in his voice, just acceptance. But thank you for the thought. We pulled up to a restaurant I didn't recognize, no sign, just a discreet door with a seated doorman. Inside was elegant in that way that speaks of old money and older secrets. White tablecloths, crystal chandeliers, waiters who moved like ghosts. The maître d' greeted Dante by name and led us to a private booth in the back, away from other diners. I slid into buttersoft leather seats and tried not to gawk at the menu, which had no prices listed. Order whatever you want, Dante said, reading my hesitation. And before you say you're not hungry, I saw you at the funeral. You need to eat. Bossy, I muttered, but I was smiling. It's been mentioned. I ordered pasta carbonara because it reminded me of my grandmother and watched Dante do the same. When the waiter left, Dante leaned back and studied me with those dark, intense eyes. Tell me about your shop, he said. Your grandmother left it to you? Yes. She ran it for 40 years, started with a cart on the street corner and built it into something real. When she got sick, she made me promise to keep it going. I looked down at my hands. I'm not doing a very good job of it. Why not? Because I'm a florist, not a businesswoman. I know flowers, I know design, but I don't know how to compete with the big chains, how to market online, I trailed off, embarrassed. I'm drowning, basically. What if you had help? I looked up sharply. What kind of help? I know people. Business consultants, marketing experts, accountants who could help you restructure. He held up a hand before I could protest. Not as a favor to me. As an investment. My family has resources we could help you make the shop profitable, and in return you'd provide flowers for our events, our businesses. Dante, I can't. Why not? It's business. You provide a service, we pay for it. Everyone benefits. Because it feels like charity. It's not charity if you earn it. He leaned forward and I caught that scent of cedar and spice again. Rose, my family owns half of Manhattan. We have legitimate businesses that need flowers, hotels, restaurants, event spaces. Why shouldn't you be the one to provide them? Because once I accepted, I'd be tied to his world. Because business relationships of families like the Salvatores never stay just business. Because I was already in too deep and this would pull me under completely. But I thought of my grandmother's shop, of the legacy I was failing to preserve. Thought of having enough money to not just survive but actually grow, to compete, to thrive. I'll think about it, I said carefully. Fair enough. He sat back as our food arrived. Now tell me about your favorite flower. The change of subject was so abrupt I blinked. What? Your favorite flower? You work with them all day, you must have a favorite. Peonies, I said without hesitation. They're temperamental, only bloom for a few weeks, and require perfect conditions. But when they bloom, I could picture them perfectly, full and lush and impossibly beautiful. They're worth all the trouble, like the best things in life, Dante said quietly. We ate and talked, and I learned things about him that didn't fit the image of a mob boss. He loved old movies, especially film noir. He read voraciously mostly history and philosophy. He ran every morning at 5 a.m., rain or shine, because it was the only time his mind was quiet. He'd never been married, never even been in love. Never? I asked, surprised. Hard to find something real when everyone wants something from you. He swirled wine in his glass. Women see the money, the power, the name. They don't see me. That's lonely. Yes. He met my eyes. It is. What about you? He asked. Ever been in love? I thought of Tom, my ex-boyfriend who'd left when Mom got sick and the medical bills started piling up. Thought of how quickly I love you had turned into I can't do this. I thought I was once, I admitted. Turned out I was wrong. His loss. You don't know that. Maybe I was a terrible girlfriend. Were you? I was distracted. Worried about money, about my mom, about the shop. I wasn't very fun. Love isn't supposed to be about fun, Dante said firmly. It's supposed to be about standing beside someone when things are hard. He failed you, not the other way around. The certainty in his voice made something warm unfurl in my chest. We talked until the restaurant began to empty, until the waiters started giving us polite looks that suggested we'd overstayed. Dante paid the bill, I didn't even try to argue, and we walked out into the cool night air. I don't want this to end, he said as we stood by his car. Dante, I know. I know all the reasons this is complicated. But Rose, I haven't felt this present. In years, when I'm with you, I'm not Antonio Salvatore's son, not the head of the family, not the man everyone fears or respects or wants something from. I'm just me. I should have pulled away. Should have thanked him for dinner and gone home to my safe, separate life. Instead, I stepped closer. I don't want it to end either. His hand came up to cut my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone with devastating gentleness. Then let's not end it. Not yet. He kissed me then, soft and careful, like I was something precious that might break. I melted into him, hands fisting in his jacket, and kissed him back with all the hunger and fear and longing I'd been trying to deny. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. Come home with me, he whispered. Everything in me wanted to say yes. But I'd learned young that wanting something didn't make it safe or smart. Not tonight, I said softly, but ask me again. He smiled against my hair. Tomorrow? Maybe tomorrow. He drove me home and we sat outside my building in comfortable silence, his hand holding mine across the console. Rose? He said as I reached for the door handle. Yeah? Thank you. For seeing me. I understood what he meant. Not the surface, not the power or the danger or the family name. Just Dante. Just the man. Thank you for letting me, I said. I kissed him once more quick, sweet, and then I was out of the car and walking to my building, feeling his eyes on my back the whole way. Upstairs, I leaned against my door and tried to catch my breath. My phone buzzed. I'm asking again. Tomorrow? I smiled, typed back. Maybe, but we both knew the answer was yes. The next few weeks blurred together in a haze of stolen moments and growing intimacy. Dante and I fell into a routine: dinners at quiet restaurants, walks through Central Park, late-night phone calls that lasted hours. He never pressured me, never pushed for more than I was ready to give, but the tension between us built with every look, every touch, every almost kiss. My mother's treatment resumed, this time at a better facility with doctors who didn't make her feel like a burden. The shop started getting contracts from Salvatore-owned businesses, hotels that needed weekly arrangements, restaurants that wanted daily deliveries. I hired an assistant, updated my equipment, finally fixed the broken freezer. I was happy. Terrified, yes, but happy. It couldn't last. I was closing the shop one evening when 3 men in suits appeared. Not Dante's men I'd learned to recognize as people by now. These were different. Colder, Rose-Carter? The tallest one asked. Who's asking? Friends of the Salvatore family. We need you to come with us. Fear spiked through me. I'm not going anywhere with you. It's not a request. I reached for my phone, but the tall one moved faster, plucking it from my hand. Dante will have our heads if you're hurt. But he'll understand why we had to do this. They bundled me into a black SUV before I could scream. As we drove through the darkening streets, my mind raced. Who were these men? What did they want? And why had they invoked Dante's name? We ended up at a warehouse in Queens, the kind of place that showed up in crime dramas right before something terrible happened. Inside, a man waited, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, vaguely familiar. Miss Carter, he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Thank you for joining us. I didn't exactly have a choice. No, I suppose not. He gestured to a chair. Sit, we need to talk about Dante. I remained standing. If you have something to say to Dante, say it to him. I would, but my nephew has stopped taking my calls. Ever since he started spending time with you, he's been distracted. Soft. Nephew. This was Marco, the cousin from the funeral, the one who'd wanted to talk business. What do you want? I want you to understand something. Marco circled me slowly, like a predator assessing prey. The Salvatore family is not a romance novel. We don't do love stories and happy endings. We do business. And right now, Dante's distraction is costing us. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? He stopped in front of me. Dante's been neglecting his responsibilities. Missing meetings, delaying decisions, all because he's too busy playing house with a florist from the Bronx. Anger flared, burning away fear. I never asked him to do any of that. Maybe not. But you're still the problem. He pulled out a thick envelope. Here's the solution. $500,000. Take it, disappear, and never contact Dante again. I stared at the envelope like it was a snake. You're trying to pay me to leave? I'm trying to save my family. Dante's in line to take over everything Antonio built. He can't do that with you hanging around, making him weak. He's not weak. He's human? Marco's laugh was cruel. Humanity is a luxury men in our position can't afford. Antonio understood that. Dante will too once you're gone. And if I don't take your money? Marco's expression hardened. Then we'll have to solve the problem another way. The threat was clear. Take the money and run or face consequences I didn't want to imagine. I need to think about it, I said, buying time. You have 24 hours. He thrust the envelope into my hands. Choose wisely, Miss Carter. For everyone's sake. They drove me back to my shop and left me on the sidewalk, shaking and furious. I waited until they were gone, then called Dante. He answered immediately. Rose, what's wrong? I can hear it in your voice. I need to see you, now. I'm on my way. He arrived 15 minutes later, practically leaping from his car. When he saw my face, his expression darkened. Who hurt you? No one, but Marco, your cousin. He had his men bring me to a warehouse. He tried to pay me to leave you. Dante went very, very still. When he spoke, his voice was soft and deadly. He did what? I explained everything: the kidnapping, the threats, the money. With every word, I watched Dante's control slip further until he was pacing like a caged tiger, fury rolling off him in waves. I'm going to kill him, he said finally. I'm actually going to fucking kill him, Dante. He had no right. No right to touch you, threaten you, any of it. He spun to face me. You're under my protection. That means you're untouchable. He knows that. He thinks I'm making you weak. He's wrong, is he? I stepped closer, forcing Dante to look at me. Have you been neglecting business, missing meetings? His jaw clenched. Maybe, but that's my choice. And what happens when that choice costs you everything? When your family loses faith in you, when your enemies see an opening? I took a shaky breath. Marco's right about one thing: I don't belong in your world. I'm a liability. Don't. Dante grabbed my shoulders, his grip gentle despite the intensity in his eyes. Don't let him make you think that. You're not a liability, Rose. You're the only real thing in my life. Real doesn't pay the bills in your world. Real doesn't keep you safe. I don't want to be safe if it means losing you. The words hung between us, raw and honest and terrifying. Dante? I whispered. What are we doing? I don't know. He pulled me against his chest, and I felt his heart hammering as fast as mine. But I know I can't lose you. Won't lose you. Marco doesn't make these decisions, I do. And what do you decide? He pulled back enough to look at me, his hands framing my face. I decide that you're mine, if you want to be. I decide that anyone who threatens you threatens me. And I decide that Marco is about to learn why you don't cross the head of this. Family. I don't want you to kill your cousin over me. I won't kill him. Dante's smile was sharp. But I will make sure he never forgets what happens when you touch what's mine. The possessiveness should have scared me. Instead, it made me feel safe, protected, chosen. What do I do with the money? I asked. Give it back. Better yet, donate it to the hospital that's treating your mother, in Marco's name. The smile widened. Let him explain that to the IRAS. Despite everything, I laughed. You're devious. I'm a Salvatore. He kissed my forehead, soft and sweet. But for you, I'm also just a man who's falling in love and doesn't know how to stop. My breath caught. Dante, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. Whatever happens next, whatever we face, you should know that what I feel for you is real. I stood on my toes and kissed him, pouring everything I couldn't say into the press of my lips against his. When we broke apart, his eyes had gone dark with want. Come home with me, he said again. Tonight. Let me show you that you belong. This time I didn't hesitate. Yes. Dante's home wasn't the mansion where the funeral had been held. That was the family estate, he explained as we drove. His personal residence was a penthouse in Tribeca, all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It's beautiful, I breathed, taking in the view. It's empty, he corrected. Has been since I moved in. I'm never here except to sleep. Why this place then? Because it's mine. Not my father's, not the family's, mine. He came up behind me, arms circling my waist. And now yours too, if you want it. I leaned back against him, feeling safe in a way I hadn't in years. I want it. He turned me in his arms, and the kiss was different this time, hungry, desperate, full of weeks of restrained want. His hands slid into my hair, tilting my head for better access, and I moaned into his mouth. Bedroom, I gasped between kisses. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He actually lifted me like I weighed nothing and carried me through the penthouse. The bedroom was masculine and minimal. Dark wood, crisp white sheets, more windows overlooking the city lights. He set me down beside the bed, then stepped back, giving me space. We can stop any time. Just say the word. Instead of answering, I reached for the zipper of my dress. His eyes tracked the movement, dark and hungry, as I let the fabric pool at my feet. Rose, he breathed, and my name had never sounded like that before, like worship, like prayer. He closed the distance between us, hands skimming over my skin with reverent care. Every touch was deliberate, patient, like he was memorizing me. When he finally laid me back on the bed, I was trembling with want. Tell me what you need, he murmured against my neck. You, just you. He made love to me like I was precious, like I was the answer to questions he'd been asking his whole life. Slow and thorough and devastating in the best way. And when we finally came apart together, his name on my lips and mine on his, I knew there was no going back. Afterwards, we lay tangled together in his expensive sheets, the city glittering below us. His fingers traced lazy patterns on my skin. I meant it, he said quietly. What I said about falling in love. I turned to face him, studying his beautiful, dangerous face in the dim light. I know, and I think I'm falling too. You think? I'm terrified to be sure. Everything about this is too fast, too intense, too real? Yes. He kissed me softly. Then be terrified with me. We'll figure it out together. Your family will never accept me. They'll learn to. Or they'll learn what happens when they don't. Dante, I don't want to cause a war in your family. You won't. I will. His expression was serious. I'm the head of this family, Rose. My word is law. If I say you're untouchable, you're untouchable. If I say you belong at my side, you belong there. Anyone who has a problem with that can answer to me. Even Marco? Especially Marco. He pulled me closer. Tomorrow I'm calling a family meeting. Everyone will be there. And I'm going to make it very, very clear that you're under my protection. That anyone who threatens you threatens me. That's going to make me even more of a target. Or it will make you the most dangerous person to touch in all of New York. He smiled grimly. Trust me, once my family understands what you mean to me, they'll guard you like their own. And what do I mean to you? He was quiet for a long moment, his hand finding mine in the darkness, fingers threading together. Everything, he said simply. You mean everything. I fell asleep in his arms that night, feeling safer than I had in years, not knowing that safety was an illusion that would shatter before sunrise. The phone woke us at 3 a.m., shrill and insistent. Dante grabbed it, his voice rough with sleep. This better be important. I watched his expression change confusion to understanding to pure fury. When? A pause. How bad? Another pause, longer this time. I'm on my way. He was out of bed before he hung up, pulling on clothes with swift economical movements. What's wrong? I asked, sitting up. My mother. She's in the hospital. Heart attack. He was already at the door. I have to go. I'm coming with you. Rose, don't argue. I'm coming. He looked like he wanted to protest, but there wasn't time. We were in his car and racing through empty streets within minutes, the city a blur of lights and shadows. The hospital was an Upper East Side, private and exclusive. Dante barely stopped at the reception desk before heading to the cardiac unit. His family was already there, Marco, several uncles and cousins, all looking grim. When Marco saw me, his face twisted with rage. What is she doing here? She's with me, Dante said flatly. Where's my mother? In surgery. The doctor said it's bad, Dante, really bad. For just a moment, I saw Dante's saw the scared son beneath the powerful boss. I took his hand, squeezed it, and he squeezed back so hard it almost hurt. We waited, hours passed. Dante paced, his family whispered, and I sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair and prayed to a god I wasn't sure I believed in anymore. Finally, a doctor emerged. Family of Maria Salvatore? Dante was there in an instant. How is she? She's stable. The surgery went well, but the next 48 hours are critical. The doctor's expression was grave. She's asking for you. They let Dante in first. When he emerged 20 minutes later, his eyes were red. She wants to see you, he said to me. Me? Why? I don't know. But she specifically asked for Rose. Marco made a sound of protest, but Dante silenced him with a look. I followed the nurse through sterile corridors to Maria's room. She looked small in the hospital bed, hooked up to machines that beeped and hummed, but her eyes were clear when she saw me. Rose, she said, her voice weak. Come closer, child. I approached the bed carefully. Mrs. Salvatore, I'm so sorry. Maria, she corrected. Call me Maria. She took my hand with surprising strength. My son loves you. It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. Good, that's good. She closed her eyes briefly. Antonio loved your mother, you know, not romantically, it wasn't like that. But she saved his life and he never forgot. Some debts are too deep to ever repay. You don't owe me anything. I know. But I'm asking anyway. She squeezed my hand. Take care of my son. He's strong, but he's also... She searched for words. He carries too much. Always has. Even as a boy, he took on everyone's burdens. He needs someone who can help him carry them. I'm just a florist, Maria. I don't know how to navigate your world. You don't need to know. You just need to love him. The rest, she waved a weak hand. The rest is just details. Your family doesn't want me here. My family will do what? Dante tells them. He's the head now. Antonio made sure of that. Her eyes found mine again. Promise me you won't leave him. Not when things get hard. And they will get hard, Rose. Men in power always have enemies. I promise, I heard myself say. She smiled, satisfied, and closed her eyes. Good, now send my son back in. I need to yell at him for working too hard. I found Dante in the hallway, looking lost. When he saw me, relief flooded his face. What did she say? She told me to take care of you. Something in his expression cracked. She always was too perceptive. She loves you. They all do, in their way. Not all of them. He glanced toward where Marco stood with other family members. Some of them just see a throne to take, then protect it. Show them why you're in charge. He looked at me with something like wonder. You sound like my father. Is that a bad thing? No. He pulled me into his arms right there in the hospital corridor, not caring who saw. No, it's perfect. We stayed at the hospital for 2 more days while Maria recovered. Dante barely left her side, and I brought him food, coffee, clean clothes. His family watched this with varying degrees of acceptance and resentment. On the 3rd day, as Maria was being moved out of intensive care, Dante called the family meeting he promised. It was held in a private conference room at the hospital. 12 people assembled: uncles, cousins, trusted associates. Marco sat at the far end of the table, his expression carefully neutral. Dante stood at the head of the table, and I'd never seen him look more like his father's son. Authority radiated from him, undeniable and absolute. Thank you all for coming, he began. I know this has been a difficult few days. But there are things that need to be said, and I wanted to say them while you're all here. He gestured for me to stand beside him. I did, my heart pounding. Rose Carter is under my protection, Dante said clearly. Effective immediately, she is to be treated as family. Any threat against her is a threat against me. Any disrespect shown to her is disrespect to me. Is this understood? Silence. Then one by one, heads nodded. I'll accept Marco. You're making a mistake, he said flatly. She's a weakness, an outsider. She's mine, Dante corrected. And I don't explain my decisions to you or anyone else in this room. I'm the head of this family. My word is law. He leaned forward, hands flat on the table. Now, I'm going to ask you one more time, Marco. Is this understood? The standoff lasted maybe 10 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. Finally, Marco nodded stiffly. Good, Dante straightened. Now, let's talk about the business you were so concerned about. The meeting lasted 2 hours. I sat beside Dante the whole time, watching him command the room with the same ease his father probably had. Decisions were made, territories assigned, disputes settled. By the time it ended, everyone in that room knew exactly who was in charge. And they knew I was part of that power structure now, whether they liked it or not. Afterwards, Marco approached me privately. You won, he said without preamble. This wasn't a competition. Everything's a competition in this family. He studied me with those sharp, calculating eyes. But I'll admit I underestimated you. You're stronger than you look. I had a good teacher. Life in the Bronx doesn't leave room for weakness. No, I suppose it doesn't. He extended his hand. Truce? I considered it, then shook. Truce, but if you ever threaten me again, you'll have Dante destroy me. I know, he smiled wryly. Message received, Miss Carter. Maria was released from the hospital a week later. Dante threw a small celebration at his penthouse just family, he said, though I noticed that definition now included me. I spent the evening watching the Salvatores interact, learning the dynamics and hierarchies. They were loud, passionate, quick to argue and quicker to laugh. They reminded me of my grandmother's family, actually Italian through and through, no matter how many generations had passed. Maria pulled me aside at one point. You're good for him, she said, watching Dante laugh at something his uncle said. I haven't seen him this light in years. He's good for me, too. Are you happy, child? I thought about it. My mother's treatment was going well. My shop was thriving. I had enough money to breathe without constantly calculating costs. And I had Dante who looked at me like I was the answer to every question he'd ever asked. Yes, I said honestly. I am. Good, she patted my hand. Then fight for it when the time comes, because it will. Men like my son, they attract trouble like lightning rods. You'll need to be strong. I will be. I believe you. She kissed my cheek. Welcome to the family, Rose. That night, after everyone had left and Dante and I were alone, he pulled me onto the balcony. The city spread out below us, millions of lights in the darkness. I have something for you, he said, producing a small velvet box. My heart stopped. Dante, it's not a ring. Not yet. He opened the box to reveal a delicate necklace, a pendant shaped like a rose, crafted from white gold and diamonds. I wanted you to have something that represents what you mean to me. It's beautiful. He fastened it around my neck, his fingers warm against my skin. My father gave my mother a necklace like this when they first got serious, a symbol that she was under his protection. I wanted to do the same for you. I touched the pendant, feeling its weight. I don't need protection. I know. But I need to give it anyway. He turned me to face him. Rose, I know this has all moved fast. I know there are 1,000 reasons this shouldn't work. But I need you to know I'm all in. Completely. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Together, I agreed. He kissed me then, soft and sweet, and I tasted promise in it. Tasted future and hope and all the dangerous, beautiful things that came with loving a man like Dante Salvatore. Stay with me tonight, he murmured against my lips, and tomorrow. And every night after that. Are you asking me to move in? I'm asking you to build a life with me. Here, in this city we both love, you keep your shop, your independence, your own identity. But come home to me at the end of the day. Let me take care of you the way you take care of me. I should have asked for time to think. Should have been practical, cautious, smart. Instead, I said yes. Moving into Dante's penthouse happened gradually over the next month. A drawer of clothes here, toiletries in the bathroom there, until one day I realized I hadn't been back to my apartment in over a week. My mother approved, though she worried. Just be careful, she told me during one of my hospital visits. Love makes us brave, but it can also make us blind. I'm not blind, Mom. I know what his world is like. Do you? She studied me seriously. Because it's not just fancy cars and penthouses, Rose. It's men with guns. It's making choices that keep you up at night. It's knowing the man you love might not come home someday. I know. And you're okay with that? Was I? I thought of Dante's hands, calloused from honest work even though he could have soft hands if he wanted. Thought of the way he looked at me like I was air and he'd been drowning. Thought of the life we were building together, brick by careful brick. I'm okay with it, I said firmly. The shop continued to thrive. With Danny's business connections and my growing reputation for quality work, we expanded, hired 3 more employees, moved to a bigger location in a better neighborhood. I kept the old sign my grandmother had painted, though. Some things were sacred. Dante proposed on a Tuesday. Not a special occasion, not a grand gesture. We were in the penthouse kitchen, making pasta together. He'd insisted on teaching me his grandmother's recipe. Flour dusted the counters in both of us, and I was laughing at his insistence on the perfect consistency for the dough. Marry me, he said suddenly. I looked up from the pasta. What? Marry me? He wiped flour from my cheek. I know it's fast. I know conventional wisdom says we should wait. But Rose, I've never been more sure of anything. I love you. I want to build a life with you. I want Sunday dinners and arguments about nothing and growing old together. So marry me. You don't even have a ring. I have this. He pulled the flower-covered ring from his pocket, a stunning diamond that had probably cost more than my car. I've been carrying it for 2 weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. But there is no perfect moment. There's just us in my kitchen, covered in flour and completely in love. Tears blurred my vision. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. Is that a yes? Yes, I laughed through the tears. Yes, of course, yes. He slipped the ring on my finger. It fit perfectly. Of course, and kissed me until we both forgot about the pasta, about everything except each other. The wedding was planned for spring. Small, intimate, just family and close friends. My mother would walk me down the aisle if her health held. Dante's mother would stand as his witness. It would be perfect. But 3 weeks before the wedding, everything went wrong. I was at the shop working on arrangements for a corporate event when the news broke. Federal agents had raided several Salvatore properties. Arrests had been made. The headline on every news site was the same: Salvatore crime family under investigation. I tried calling Dante. No answer. Tried again. Nothing. Finally, Marco called me. Rose, listen carefully. Danny's been taken in for questioning. They have a warrant. It's bad. How bad? Racketeering, money laundering, possibly worse. They've been building a case for months. My knees went weak. Are they going to charge him? I don't know. But Rose, you need to prepare yourself. This could go either way. I spent the next 12 hours in hell. No word from Dante, no updates from his lawyers, just endless waiting and worry. The penthouse felt massive and empty without him, every corner echoing with his absence. Finally, at 2 a.m., the door opened. Dante looked exhausted, his suit rumpled, dark circles under his eyes, a day's worth of stubble on his jaw. But he was home. I launched myself at him, and he caught me, holding tight. I thought I was so scared. I know. I'm sorry. He buried his face in my hair. They held me as long as they legally could. Asked a million questions, showed me evidence I'd never seen before. Are they going to charge you? I don't know yet. He pulled back to look at me. My lawyers say it could go either way. We have good defenses, but... Rose, this is serious. I know. If they charge me, there'll be a trial, media coverage. Your name will be dragged through this. I don't care. You should. He cupped my face. This is your chance to walk away before things get worse. Before you're too tangled up to escape. I don't want to escape. Rose. No. I grabbed his hands. Listen to me. I don't care about media coverage or trials or any of it. I care about you. And I'm not leaving. It could destroy your reputation. Your business? Then we'll rebuild. Together. I pulled him close. For better or worse, remember? That's what we're signing up for. We're not married yet. Close enough? I kissed him fiercely. I'm not going anywhere, Dante. Get used to it. He held me like I was the only solid thing in a tilting world. I don't deserve you. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway. The next few months were brutal. The investigation continued, expanding to include more family members, more properties. Dante spent hours with lawyers, preparing defenses, making deals where he could. The wedding was postponed indefinitely. My shop took a hit, some clients backed away, nervous about the association. But others stayed loyal and new ones emerged, attracted by the notoriety. I kept working, kept building, kept proving that I was more than just Dante Salvatore's fiancé. The trial date was set for October. In August, Dante sat me down for a serious talk. The lawyers think we can win, he said, but there are no guarantees. If I'm convicted, I'm looking at serious time. 10 years, maybe more. Don't talk like that. I have to. We have to face the possibility. He took my hands. Rose, if that happens, I don't want you to wait for me. Stop. Listen, 10 years is a long time. You'd be in your late 30s by the time I got out. You deserve a life, a family, all the things I can't give you from behind bars. I deserve you, I said fiercely. And I'll wait as long as it takes. Rose. No, I made a promise and I'm keeping it, in good times and bad, in sickness and health. In freedom, and my voice cracked, and whatever else comes. He pulled me into his arms and I felt him shaking. How did I get so lucky? You didn't. I'm a disaster. You're my disaster. He kissed the top of my head. And I love you for it. The trial began in October as scheduled. I attended every day, sitting in the front row where Dante could see me, offering silent support. The prosecution painted him as a violent criminal. The defense painted him as a legitimate businessman caught in his father's shadow. The truth, as usual, was somewhere in between. Witnesses testified. Evidence was presented. Dante remained calm throughout. His only tells the way his hand would clench when particularly damaging testimony was given. On the final day, before closing arguments, Dante surprised everyone by asking to make a statement. I grew up in this life, he told the court. Learned at my father's knee, absorbed his lessons, followed his example. And yes, I made choices I'm not proud of, took shortcuts. Looked the other way when I should have questioned. But I also tried to be better than the generation before me. Tried to legitimize our businesses, to give back to our community, to be more than just a name synonymous with crime. He looked directly at me. And I met someone who made me want to be better still. Someone who saw past the name and the power and the fear and just saw me. Someone worth changing for, worth fighting for, worth building a real, honest life for. Whatever you decide today will change my life forever. But it won't change who I've become because of her. And it won't change how hard I'll fight to be the man she deserves. The jury deliberated for 3 days. I spent those days in the penthouse, pacing and praying and trying not to imagine the worst. Finally, the call came. Verdict was in. We assembled in the courtroom, me, Maria, the family, all of us holding our breath. The foreman stood. On the charge of racketeering, we find the defendant not guilty. Relief crashed over me like a wave. On the charge of money laundering, we find the defendant not guilty. Dante's hand found mine, gripped tight. On the charge of conspiracy, we find the defendant not guilty. It continued, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. Every charge dismissed. Every accusation unproven. When it was over, when the judge had thanked the jury and dismissed the court, Dante turned to me. There were tears in his eyes, the first I'd ever seen. "We won," he whispered. "We won," I agreed. Outside the courthouse, media swarmed. Dante handled it like the professional he was, thanking his lawyers, expressing confidence in the justice system, promising to continue building legitimate businesses. But when a reporter asked about his personal life, about the woman who'd sat beside him through the entire trial, he didn't hesitate. "Rose Carter is my fiancée, and as soon as she let me, she'd be my wife. She stood by me through the worst time of my life, never wavered, never doubted. I'm the luckiest man alive. Miss Carter." Another reporter called. "How does it feel to be engaged to a man who was on trial for?" "It feels like being engaged to a good man who made mistakes and paid for them." I interrupted. "It feels like building a future with someone I love and trust completely. It feels like coming home." That night, back at the penthouse, Dante asked me again. "Marry me, not someday, not eventually. This week. This month. As soon as we can arrange it. Your mother will kill us if we elope. Then we'll have a small ceremony. 20 people maximum. But Rose, I can't wait anymore. I almost lost everything. I almost lost you. I need to make you my wife before anything else can go wrong. Nothing's going to go wrong. Promise. Me anyway." I looked at this man I'd stumbled into loving, dangerous and gentle, powerful and vulnerable, broken and whole all at once. "This Saturday," I said. "We'll get married this Saturday." His smile was incandescent. This Saturday, we did it. 5 days later, in a small chapel in the Bronx, the same one where my grandmother had married my grandfather 60 years ago, I became Rose Salvatore. My mother walked me down the aisle, tears streaming down her face. Maria stood as Dante's witness, reading despite her recent health scare. Marco and a handful of close family members filled the pews. The ceremony was simple. Traditional vows, 2 rings, 1 kiss that felt like coming home. At the reception held in a family-owned restaurant, intimate and warm, Dante pulled me onto the dance floor for our first dance. "No regrets?" he murmured as we swayed together. "Only that I didn't say yes the first time you asked. We got here eventually. We did." I rested my head on his shoulder. "Where do we go from here?" "Wherever you want. The world's ours now." I thought about it, about the shop I'd built, the family I'd joined, the life we'd created from chaos and chance. Home, I decided, let's just go home, so we did. We went home to the penthouse overlooking the city, to the life we were building together, to the future that stretched out before us like an open road. It wouldn't always be easy. Dante's world came with complications mine never had. But we'd face them together just like we'd faced everything else, together, and that, I was learning, made all the difference. The shop had expanded again 3 locations now, with a 4th planned for next spring. I'd hired a manager for the original Bronx location, someone who understood my vision and could execute it while I focused on growth and design. Dante had restructured his family's businesses, slowly shifting away from the gray areas and into completely legitimate operations. It was hard, sometimes frustrating, often slower than he wanted. But he was committed to the change. We'd bought a house in Connecticut for weekends, nothing ostentatious. Just a quiet place where we could escape the city noise and be ordinary people for a little while. My mother's cancer was in remission. She'd moved into a condo Dante had bought her, close enough to visit but far enough to maintain independence. She and Maria had become unlikely friends, bonding over the shared experience of watching their children build something new. I was happy. More than that, I was content, safe, loved. On our first anniversary, Dante surprised me with a trip to Italy. We spent 2 weeks exploring his family's ancestral village in Sicily, meeting distant relatives, eating food that made my grandmother's cooking seem mundane by comparison. On our last night, we sat on a terrace overlooking the Mediterranean, wine in hand, stars overhead. "Thank you," Dante said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing me that first day. For staying when anyone sensible would have run. For building this life with me." He turned to me and his eyes were soft. "For loving me even when I didn't deserve it." "You deserve it," I said firmly. "You deserve all of it." "I'm not so sure. But I'm grateful anyway." I thought back to that day in the rain, to the note tucked between white lily, to the funeral that had changed everything. "Your father knew," I said suddenly. "Somehow he knew we'd be good for each other. Maybe he just wanted to repay a debt and got lucky with the results. Either way, I'm glad he left that note." "So am one," Dante pulled me close. "So am I." We sat in comfortable silence, two people from different worlds who'd found each other anyway. The florist and the mob boss. The girl from the Bronx and the heir to an empire. It shouldn't have worked, but it did. And that was the most beautiful thing of all.